Hi, it's Katrina. Number 10. The Legend of Achilles. One of the greatest literary mysteries in history is the Iliad, written by Homer in the 8th century BC. The book is widely recognized as one of the oldest pieces of literature still enjoyed by modern readers. You probably read it in high school. Within the book, Homer describes a lot of real places and events, but he also discusses several people who may not have existed. The issue historians have had is separating fact from fiction. For example, the mighty warrior named Achilles. Was he a man or a myth? Achilles, if Homer is to be believed, was born of the goddess Thetis and the immortal king Peleus. In Homer's story, Achilles had a horrible temper and raging arrogance. As one of the central figures in the story, Achilles goes through a long journey of becoming a better person. By the end of the book, he is less angry and impulsive, and he's gained some personal dignity. But that doesn't really answer the question of whether or not he was flesh and blood. The truth is that this mystery will probably never be solved unless we can find his tomb. Achilles would have lived in the 12th century BC, during what we call the Bronze Age. Until just a few years ago, Troy itself and the Trojan War were seen as myths. But archaeologists eventually found the glorious city in Turkey and evidence of a great battle that took place. Archaeologists also believe King Agamemnon was a real person, the leader of the Macedonians who fought against the Trojans. So, there is a real possibility Achilles fought in the Trojan War. But without his tomb, he will forever just be a legend. What do you think? Do you think Achilles was real? Let me know in the comments. Number 9. Unlucky 13. 13 is the unluckiest number in the world, and it's mainly because of Judas Iscariot. According to the Gospels, Judas was the 13th guest at the Last Supper, right before he betrayed Jesus Christ for some silver. As an interesting side note, there is a story from Norse mythology in which Loki, god of mischief, arrives as the 13th person to a feast in Valhalla, and then tricks someone into killing Baldur, Thor's half-brother. 13 has always been a naughty number in the eyes of Christians. Then, on October 13th, 1307, King Philip IV of France had the Knights Templar arrested and burned alive, adding even more negativity to the number. What you might find interesting is that the number 13 was not always considered unlucky. Before Christianity, 13 was a lucky number. It was seen as a number representing rebirth. 12 was always a number representing completeness. For example, there were 12 Olympian gods in ancient Greece. Hercules completed 12 labors. Jacob had 12 sons. There were 12 disciples of Jesus, 12 days of Christmas, 12 tribes of Israel, and 12 lunar months as well. 13 was the number that came after, considered transformative in ancient Egypt. The Egyptians believed life unfolded in 12 main stages, and the 13th was the stage of the afterlife. Not just any afterlife, but the glorious and eternal afterlife. It was most likely the Christians who ruined the number and made it unlucky. What do you think about the number 13? Let me know in the comments, and be sure to subscribe. Number 8. Pushkar and the Garden of Eden. The Garden of Eden, as described in the Bible, has never been found by modern archaeologists. Nobody knows if the mythical garden where Adam and Eve lived at the beginning of days truly existed. But there are some juicy candidates, with one being in a rather peculiar place. Pushkar, located in the western state of Rajasthan, India, may have been the real location for the Garden of Eden. It has features described in the Bible, with 4 flowing rivers emerging from a great holy mountain as described in Genesis and Ezekiel. The 4 rivers emerge from the Pushkar Mountains on the north, east, south, and west. These days, the rivers are known as Nahar, Dai, Sagarmati, and Saraswati. But it's not surprising to think that after 10 or 20,000 years, depending on which biblical timeline you believe, the rivers change their names. In the Bible, the 4 rivers around Eden are called Parath, Hiddekel, Pishon, and Gihon. But what else does the Bible say about Eden? According to the book of Ezekiel, the Garden of God was located on the holy mountain. Pushkar is also located on a holy mountain. In Indian legend, Pushkar is the ancient city where Lord Brahma, the Hindu creator god, first came to Earth. Lord Brahma was so amazed at the beautiful scenery, lush forests, and the colorful birds that he stayed there for 1,000 years. Pushkar truly is a place of paradise, and it could be the real Garden of Eden. And now for number 7. But first, it's shoutout time! I want to say a big thank you to History Hype and David Shivulu for supporting this channel. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already for more videos about history's unsolved mysteries. Number 7. The Irish Giant. Charles Byrne was the Irish Giant. He was born in 1761 and would grow to become one of the tallest human beings that we know of. In 1780s London, he was considered a freak. His height at the time was debated, with some saying he was over 8 feet 4 inches, but his skeleton suggests he was only 7 feet 7 inches. Either way, he was a very real giant. Charles' skeleton was even put on display at the Hunterian Museum in London following his death in 1783. Charles explicitly asked his family and friends to throw his body into the ocean upon his passing so that scientists wouldn't dissect him, but his cadaver was stolen, dissected, and put on display in a case anyway. It remained behind glass until 2023. It took almost 200 years for the museum to finally acknowledge Charles as a person and give him his dignity back. But why are we talking about a man who lived in the 18th century? Well, because he's a giant. Scientists say that Charles suffered from a growth disorder, and there wasn't anything supernatural or exciting about him. He had what scientists call acromegalic gigantism. When Charles was 22 years old, he suffered an early and painful death because of his condition. But what if Charles wasn't simply a human being? Charles had his DNA extracted by German researchers in 2011. They found that he had a rare mutation in his AIP gene. They were able to link this gene to 4 families living in Northern Ireland. Researchers believe Charles had a common ancestor with these families about 1,600 years ago. But what if their lineage goes even further back, thousands of years ago, to a time when the world was ruled by real giants? Do you believe in giants? Let me know in the comments. Number 6. The Zuni and the Kachinas. The Zuni are a group of Native Americans who lived in the Zuni River Valley of New Mexico when Europeans arrived and began to conquer the land. They still live there today, recognized by the federal government and in possession of trust lands in New Mexico and Arizona. But several thousand years ago, the Zuni lived in stone adobe houses. They existed in the American Southwest 4,000 years ago, surviving by hunting. Then, about 1,000 years ago, they started to irrigate the land and farm maize, aka a type of corn. In the Zuni religion, they worshipped a group of beings known as the Kachina. Zuni legend says the Kachina came down from the heavens, greeted the Zuni elders, and brought them sacred knowledge of the sky. They didn't necessarily start human civilization, but they did bring great wisdom and understanding. This knowledge helped the Zuni shift from primitive hunting and gathering to farming and city dwelling. The Kachina gods were loved by all the Zuni and were depicted as curious humanoids with colorful skin and strange headdresses, almost like space helmets. The mystery here is that historians don't know what to think of the Kachina, so you know what that means. Many ancient alien enthusiasts believe they were alien astronauts who came from the stars to help the Zuni become more advanced as a civilization. The thing is that the theorists could just ask the Zuni themselves, because, like I said, they are still around. Number 5. Mystery craters. Craters have been appearing all across Turkey and nobody knows what's going on. According to local farmers, giant sinkholes that look like they've been blasted into farmland using laser beams have been opening at an alarming rate. It's a problem that's always affected farmers who frequently irrigate their land. All that irrigation has the potential to erode away the fragile earth beneath and lead to sinkholes opening. But now the phenomenon is happening everywhere. Giant craters are opening in snowy fields to the north, appearing in the middle of fields, and they've even begun to open in residential areas. Authorities are terrified that if the mystery craters continue to appear, they could start to swallow entire buildings, which has already happened. Just look at Florida and Guatemala. The land is starting to look like Swiss cheese, and nobody knows what to do. Have you ever seen a sinkhole up close? Let me know in the comments. Number 4. Ancient Aztec Secrets. Archaeologists in Mexico have always been curious as to how the ancient Aztecs tracked the sun across the sky and maintained a perfect calendar for farming. Now researchers may have finally figured it out. They think they know how Mexica temples were used and how the Aztec used tall mountains as their natural observatories. For the first time in history, archaeologists may be revealing some unsolved mysteries of Aztec star seekers. Based on the accounts of Spanish conquistadors, we know Mexico City, previously known as Tenochtitlan, was a thriving metropolis in 1519, with about 3 million people living inside its borders. To maintain such a high population, Aztec scientists had to predict seasonal changes, prepare irrigation ditches, and successfully produce food to feed everyone. To do this, Aztec astronomer priests watched the sun very carefully to know exactly which day it was and which month it was in the year. Researchers from land-grant University Riverside recently studied the Aztec sky watchers to try and understand them better. The team came to the conclusion that sky watchers would stand at a single spot on the highest mountain peak they could find and look east. They would just stand there every single day and watch the sunrise. One of the likely spots where this happened was Mount Tlaloc, close to the border with Puebla. It was a ceremonial site used in the 7th century AD, but up until now, nobody had known what kind of ceremonies it was used for. Now, researchers think this was the very place where the designated watcher came to view the sunrise every day and keep track of the dates. That sounds like a nice job. Number 3. Mystery spheres. Giant stone spheres have been discovered all over the planet. Excavators in Siberia found a collection of huge, perfectly smooth giant spheres in a coal mine. Each one was about 3 feet across and looked to be artificially made. They looked like concrete cannonballs. But the discovery in Russia wasn't the only one. The Moki marbles of the western United States are another example of perfectly smooth spheres being dug out of the ground. On the north coast of California, on the shoreline where the water is slowly eroding the cliffs, people have discovered dozens of similar stone orbs. Fittingly, they call this place Bowling Ball Beach because there are so many perfect stone spheres that look like natural bowling balls. And in Bosnia, a truly megalithic stone sphere over 7 feet tall was found buried in a wooded hillside, leading many to speculate it was created by an ancient civilization. Samir Osmanagic, a local archaeologist in Bosnia, says the 9-foot-wide stone ball found in the Visoko Valley was made by a lost and unknown group of people. He says a mysterious civilization lived in the valley 1,000 years ago, and that they were responsible for building preposterously large balls. However, Samir is about the only archaeologist who believes this. Experts say the spheres that have been found across the globe are nothing but concretions. These are natural rocks that form when small mineral particles become stuck together. These small particles get wedged between larger bits of sand and dirt, and over millions of years form perfectly circular balls. It's like building a snowman, but with dirt and without moving. Number 2. Squatters' rights. The custom of Ti Inus, translated into English as house in one night, was something that may or may not have happened in Wales during the 17th and 18th centuries. The custom was a strange one, and it came about at a time when young people were finding it more difficult to own land in their home villages. People started building houses and squatting in them. According to the legend, if you could build a house on common land between sunset and sunrise, you could claim that land to be legally yours. If you could complete a fully functioning house with smoke billowing up from the chimney before the sun came up, you had earned yourself the right to the land. The thing about the tradition is nobody knows if it really happened. Mr. William from the St. Fagan's National Museum of History in Cardiff says the tradition is widely acknowledged, but finding genuine examples is virtually impossible. He says there are no surviving examples of the original structures used by squatters to get themselves some free property. This could be because they would often build a sturdier house in the months following the construction of the original dwelling. One of the houses purported to be an original Ti Inus cottage is the ugly house in Wales, Snowdonia. It's a crude thing built out of rock and timber, but most experts believe it was built in the 19th century. What do you think about this practice? Could you build a house in one night? Let me know in the comments. Number 1. The Eye of Ra. The mystery of the Eye of Ra is one that stretches back over 3,000 years. It's one of the most powerful ancient symbols that we know about, but nobody knows its exact origin. Archaeologists know it was important because the Eye of Ra has been discovered painted on walls of temples and made into amulets. Pharaohs used the Eye of Ra to defend themselves against negative energy. They believed that by having an amulet shaped like the eye, they could defend themselves against enemies and black magic. The amulet would be painted dark red to better protect against evil spells. The Eye of Ra had a lot of different meanings to ancient Egyptians. This is why it's so hard to figure out where it originally came from and how it grew to be one of the most popular symbols in Egypt. The Egyptians likely saw the Eye of Ra as a representation of the sun and its destructive power. But the eye was also a symbol of royal authority, something wielded by the pharaohs. Of course, many believe the eye had a much more esoteric meaning. It may have represented a third eye, a source of inner power most humans have totally forgotten about. Do you believe in the power of the third eye or the Eye of Ra? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and thanks for watching! Remember to subscribe if you haven't already, and come back soon for more videos!